The alarm didn't sound like an alarm. It slipped into my headset like an electrical whisper. One sharp click, and then that voice with no emotion at all. Emergency action message. Copy. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. The B-52's cockpit vibrated the way it always did. The deep roar of 8 engines traveling through the airframe like our own pulse. But the air changed. It got heavier, shorter. My breath started fogging the visor, hot, fast, and I had to force the rhythm. In, hold, out. Because up there, the only thing worse than fear is letting fear show up in your voice. The navigator looked at me. No question, no joke, just the smallest movement. Now. I pulled the code pad closer and stared at the HF radio like it could stare back. The needle trembled. Static rolled in waves like rough sea hitting a hull. Outside, the world was black and blue, and below us, there was only ice and silence. And for a second, I felt the most absurd thing of all. The routine was intact. The aircraft flew perfectly. The horizon was calm. And still, the entire planet could be changing inside a single sentence. Repeat line 3, the co-pilot said, quiet and controlled. The voice repeated. I wrote, letter by letter, number by number. And then the radio coughed. A crack. A void. Silence. I called again. Nothing. Just static. Just that sound like snow falling inside your skull. Did we lose the channel? The flight engineer asked. I tried another frequency, another antenna, another relay path. The B-52 kept moving, but the only thing that mattered now was the message I still hadn't confirmed. Because on this kind of mission, you don't think you heard something. You don't interpret. You obey, or you choose not to obey, and you carry that decision for the rest of your life. I felt sweat slide down my back into the seat. It wasn't heat. It was the body reacting to what it knows before the mind admits it. This could be real. And that's when I thought the most dangerous thought possible. What if it isn't? Months earlier, I would have laughed at the idea that you can get used to the end of the world. But the truth is, you can get used to anything, if they give you a schedule. We lived in cycles. Broken sleep, meals whenever they happened, quiet voices. I knew the taste of reheated midnight coffee and the smell of a flight suit like they were part of my skin. The word alert stopped being a jolt and became a way of existing. In my head, I started calling it borrowed life, because it wasn't a normal flight. It never was. The mission had a simple name, too clean for what it meant. A program where bombers stayed airborne with weapons no one should ever use, just to ensure that if someone tried to erase us first, the response would still exist. That was it. Cold, logical, and unbearable if you thought about it for more than 5 seconds. At first, I kept my mind on the technical. Navigation, fuel burn, weather, air refueling, checklists, discipline. That saves you. That keeps you functioning. But there's a moment, usually when the autopilot is steady and the sky feels endless, when your mind has room left over. And then you remember what you're carrying. It isn't a physical weight. The airplane can handle it. It's the psychological weight of knowing you're training for something that has no victory. Only survivors and ruins. And still, you smile at the crew. You talk details. You comment on the wind. You joke about base food. Because the brain has to pretend it's just another shift. Routine becomes the perfect mask. Until the day it slips. The first time I felt it was during a night refueling. We found the KC-135 like you find a lighthouse in the middle of nowhere. Its lights were small points in the dark. Bringing a B-52 onto that boom line is a kind of confidence and a kind of prayer. The boom came down, contact, and you hear the fuel moving like the aircraft is drinking. I looked out and saw the tanker's wing a few meters away, steady, beautiful, almost gentle. And I thought, if anything goes wrong here, There's no emergency landing. There's a headline. There's official silence. There are people saying nothing happened, and everything happened. That night, back in the quarters, I couldn't sleep. Not because I feared the flying, because I feared the normal. Because what was being normalized was the idea that pressing a button could be procedure. And then came that Arctic night. The moment the radio failed and the message got stuck halfway inside the cockpit. The co-pilot looked at me again, and it wasn't pressure. It was the same question burning in his eyes. What do we do if this is real? I didn't answer, because the technical answer was simple. The human answer was a hole. I breathed slowly and opened the sealed compartment where the mission packet lived. The paper inside had a certain smell, paper stored too long, protected too well, like even the air around it needed clearance. I pulled out the cards, the sealed instructions. And for a second, I felt the strangest thing in the world. Anger. Anger at a system that puts a man in a cockpit miles above the ground and says, if the world ends, do it correctly. The flight engineer started talking about static discharge, ionospheric interference. The navigator was already recalculating. They were doing what professionals do, building a bridge over panic. But me, I only heard the silence. Outside the glass, the night was so black it looked solid. No cities, no roads, no visible life. It was like we were already flying over an afterworld. Captain, the navigator said, we need authentication. Without authentication, we don't proceed to the next step. That sentence grabbed me like a rope on a cliff. Without authentication. Because there was an invisible line between training and destiny. And that line was called verification. Without it, everything was noise. With it, everything became history. I drove the radio harder, switched to backup, requested retransmit on alternate channels, had the co-pilot try the nearest relay. Time stretched. Every second felt like it had its own mass. And inside me, a debate started that I never imagined I'd have. If the message is real and we hesitate, we fail what we swore to do. If the message is false and we act, we become the trigger for something no one can undo. There's no half right here. There's what you do and what the world becomes afterward. My hand rested on the paper, but it felt like touching something alive. My heart hammered up into my throat. My tongue went dry. The oxygen mask suddenly felt tighter than before. Then a sound returned to the headset. Not a voice yet. A tone, a signal, a path opening. The static eased. And then came the sentence I needed to hear, the sentence no one ever wants to hear, and yet the only thing that prevents the worst. Previous message invalid, repeat, invalid, return to mission standard. I didn't dump the air out of my lungs all at once. I gave it back to the world in pieces, like I was afraid breathing too loudly might break something. The co-pilot closed his eyes for a second. The engineer laughed without sound. The navigator let his pencil drop and stared forward, motionless. The cockpit stayed the same. The airplane kept flying. The world below kept existing. And that was the most frightening part, because we had just touched the edge, and the edge didn't scream, didn't shake. It just sat there, like a door that almost opens by itself. I put the codes away with too much care, like the paper could remember what had happened, and I realized the moral decision hadn't been not pressing the button. The moral decision had been insisting on certainty when silence tried to push us forward. That night, I understood what no briefing ever says. The danger isn't only the enemy. The danger is routine. The machine is perfect at making you forget it was built for one purpose, to be used when no one has a choice left. When the mission ended and the runway finally appeared, I saw the base lights like it was the first time. We touched down with a gentle thump, taxied in, parked, cut engines, and the exact moment the 8-engine roar died, the silence returned. Only now, it was a different silence. It was the silence of knowing that somewhere in the world, another aircraft was lifting off to take our place. Another man was sitting in that seat. Another headset was ready to receive a message that might be real or might be noise. I stepped down the ladder and felt the cold wind hit my face. Fuel in the air, hot metal cooling. Boots on concrete. And for a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the B-52 like it was an ancient animal. Huge, patient, waiting. People call it deterrence, balance, strategy. But up there, when the radio fails and the voice disappears, no beautiful word can hold the weight. There's only you, your training, and the courage to demand certainty when the world demands speed. Because the end of the world doesn't always arrive as an explosion. Sometimes, it arrives as a click in your headset, and the courage not to answer the silence.